Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Continue to take a look at that Week 4 slate, and we got a very intriguing Big 12 matchup as the Texas Longhorns go on the road to play the Baylor Bears. It's a tough place to win a football game. That being said, I want to start with Texas and what we learned from them the last 2 weeks. Obviously, a massive win against Alabama on the road, but more importantly, that Wyoming game. And we've talked so much about Texas being back, or how can Texas, especially this year, be one of those elite teams in college football. And we said, as much talent as there is on the offense side of the ball, Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, the reason this Texas team, I think, can be special is that defense. And you saw the Texas offense really struggle to find a rhythm against Wyoming. Outside of that first drive for the Texas defense, they really answered the bell. This is about as physical and as talented of a Texas defense that I can remember. And it's going to help them be extremely special when the offense inevitably has some games where they're kind of in a rut and struggle to find that consistency. I thought we learned a lot about Texas, even though, not the most impressive win against Wyoming. Thought we learned a lot about this team and the makeup of the team and why they can be special throughout this 2023 season. Now, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. The support you guys have shown for all these game breakdowns truly does mean a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, and again, the best part about doing this is learning from you guys in the comment section, talking ball with you guys. So let me know in the comment section how you guys are feeling about this matchup. And without further ado, let's get into this. And I want to start with this Baylor offense going up against the Texas defense that I just went on a minute kind of tirade about how elite this group can be. I really struggle to see Baylor moving the ball effectively against this Texas team. You look at Baylor and kind of how their offense is running. They're obviously down their starting quarterback, Blake Shapen. Sawyer Robinson coming in. He's only completed 45% of his passes. The passing game really has been non-existent for Baylor since Blake Shapen's gone down. And they're relying on the run game, and they're running the football pretty well. They got a solid offensive line with some solid running backs. Richard Reese, I think, is one of the better running backs in the Big 12. That being said, they are, 3 years ago, this matchup, they say, hey, can Texas hold up front? Can they stop the run? You'd have some question marks there. This game, this defense, especially this front seven, I don't have many question marks. You saw Texas go on the road and absolutely handle an Alabama offensive line that we all thought was the best in the country. You take a look at the makeup of this Texas defense, it's absolutely dominant. Only allowing 2.9 yards per carry, a 55% completion percentage, forcing turnovers, over 2 turnovers a game forced. But more importantly, the personnel and the makeup of this front seven is truly special. And it starts with T'Vondre Sweat. If you would have told me, losing Keandre Coburn, losing Moro Ojomo, 2 guys that I absolutely loved during the NFL draft process, Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat brought in, and it is such a physical group on the inside. They're big, they're physical, they win at the point of attack, and more importantly, they free up those linebackers to play free and downhill. These linebackers are not really seeing any offensive linemen working up to them. T'Vondre Sweat and those guys do a really good job kind of not only getting penetration, but more importantly, eating up double teams to let these linebackers rally to the football. Benda, Jalen Ford, I still think probably should have won the Big 12 Player of the Year last year, probably one of the best linebackers in the country. Anthony Hill really coming on. It's a talented linebacker group and behind a defensive line that's dominant. And I didn't even mention some other guys that I want to. Barron Sorrell, Ethan Burke is really coming along. This front seven for Texas is so dominant. Baylor's going to try to run the football because they can't really throw it. And I don't see them having much consistent success against this Texas front seven. And then in the secondary, you talk about competitive competition. Like just a loaded group where I don't even know if Texas knows who they want to play. They have a ton of guys that I really like in the back end, and you're seeing them rotate. They're all playing at a high level. I think all that depth and competition they have in the back end really just elevating that whole secondary. This Texas defense truly is special, and especially with a matchup against Baylor where they're going to try to run the football. For me, it's hard to see them having that much success running the football, and when they get behind the chains and you can kind of unleash some of these pass rushers, it is going to be a long day for Baylor on the offensive side of the football. Now, flipping to the Texas offense, the portion of the team that, quite frankly, gets more of the hype, and it is a super talented team. Quinn Ewers, I don't know. It was kind of a sleeper game against Wyoming, right? You're coming off a big win against Alabama, but you saw when Texas needs to turn it up. I mean, they have the playmakers to do it. And it's as simple as just throwing a little bubble screen out to Xavier Worthy and letting him run by a whole entire defense. The talent that's around Quinn Ewers is so special. You talk about USC, you talk about Ohio State, you talk about Washington in the wide receiver room. I would argue that Texas's wide receivers and the playmaking around Quinn Ewers is just as good as some of those teams. I mean, Xavier Worthy, a legitimate special talent at the wide receiver position. A.D. Mitchell, about as clutch of a wide receiver as you'll find, right? When there's a big moment and a play to be made, A.D. Mitchell, going back to his time at Georgia, seems to be making it. J.T. Sanders, one of the biggest mismatches at the tight end position. And you guys know, if you're a Texas fan, been listening to me for the last couple of months, Jordan Whittington is one of my favorite players on this Texas roster in terms of just a gritty dude who's going to make the plays when he needs to. So much talent. The running back room starting to kind of figure out who those guys are, right? I was a big CJ Baxter guy as kind of a recruiting nerd, was really excited about him as a true freshman, and credit to Texas fans. And Texas fans were in the comments saying, hey, Jonathan Brooks is that dude, and he's kind of emerging as that lead back for Texas. Offensive line play, I think, can get better, and that's not to say they've been bad. I just think it can be a group that's one of the best in the country. And you got some young guys on that offensive line, right? And so waiting for them to kind of take that next step, find their stride. And if they do, I mean, this Texas team is kind of just turning into a Death Star. And it sounds like I'm just kind of gushing over this Texas offense. Baylor's defense, solid, right? Dave Aranda, one of the better defensive-minded head coaches in the country, only allowing 4.5 yards per carry. I think more of the struggles for Baylor on the defensive side of the ball is, one, the personnel. Like, they've lost a lot of good players the last 2 years, right? Terrell Bernard at that linebacker spot, Jalen Petrie from 2 years ago. And you saw even last year kind of struggling to kind of get those personnel to be a successful defense. But, man, I think the bigger reason for the struggle is not the personnel and not really the overall play of this Baylor defense. It's on the opposite of an offense that really can't stay on the field, right? And so when you're a defense, you can be as good as you want, but if you're consistently opposite of an offense that's going 3 and out, struggling to hold on to the football, it's going to spell some really tough games for a Baylor defense. And you kind of see that happening in this game where Baylor probably struggles to run the football, a lot of 3 and outs, Texas's offense on the field. And at some point, even if this Baylor defense can be competitive for the first couple quarters, you think Texas is kind of going to break through. And if you saw the Georgia-South Carolina game, kind of a similar story, right? South Carolina's defense held up for the first couple quarters against Georgia. But at a certain point, the time of possession, the amount of snaps this defense was on the field, it kind of broke down. I would think you're going to see a similar storyline in this matchup. Now, getting to the pick, Texas on the road, 14.5-point favorites. That's not even as disrespectful to Baylor as much as it's showing respect to how good this Texas team is on both sides of the football. And for me, like, that's a lot of points for Texas on the road. I get it, but I'm riding with Texas here just because I think the matchup, this Baylor offense, I think struggling to stay on the field and establish that run. And then if you give this Texas offense enough snaps, they're going to be able to find those explosive plays. Even if the consistency isn't quite there like we saw against Wyoming, at some point, they're going to start finding those explosive plays with all those playmakers and put up some points. I think Texas can light it up on the scoreboard. Baylor, not so much for me. Texas goes on the road, takes care of business, probably wins this by 2 or 3 scores. And again, you're just on to the next one. Texas, an absolute wagon right now. One of the more fun teams to watch in college football. Give me Texas. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.